Madhava Javihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Shodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. So today we are reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 18. Antavantai me deha nityasyokta sharirina anashino prameyasya tasmad yudhyasva bharata. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: the material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore fight, O descendant of Bharat. Purport: the material body is perishable by nature. It may perish immediately or it may do so after 100 years. It is a question of time only. There is no chance of maintaining it indefinitely. But the spirit soul is so minute that it cannot even be seen by an enemy, to say nothing of being killed. As mentioned in the previous verse, it is so small that no one can have any idea how to measure its dimension. So, from both viewpoints, there is no cause of lamentation because the living entity, as he is, cannot be killed, nor can the material body be saved for any length of time or permanently protected. The minute particle of the whole spirit acquires this material body according to his work, and therefore observance of religious principles should be utilized. In the Vedanta Sutras, the living entity is qualified as light because he is part and parcel of the Supreme Light. As sunlight maintains the entire universe, so the light of the soul maintains this material body. As soon as the spirit soul is out of this material body, the body begins to decompose. Therefore, it is the spirit soul which maintains this body. The body itself is unimportant. Arjuna was advised to fight and not sacrifice the cause of religion for material bodily considerations. So, before we begin, I would like to request the blessings of the previous teachers, um, and therefore we will chant some invocation mantras. ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तु ते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वञ्चाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नम ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So before we begin, I'd like to seek the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, who so wonderfully translated and elucidated the purports of the Bhagavad Gita. I'd like to request the blessings, to humbly seek the blessings of their lordships, Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda, Sri Sri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, Sri Sri Gaurnitai, so that I may speak something that is pleasing and worthy of being spoken. So here, Krishna is describing the identity of the living entity. Previous to this, Arjun is in a bit of a perplexed situation. He is confused about his duty, he's bewildered, he doesn't know what to do. The reason for his confusion is because of the scene that he was at. The Bhagavad Gita is set on the battlefield, so Arjun is about to fight his cousins, and he lists many arguments. He presents many arguments to Krishna as to why he shouldn't fight. And Krishna afterwards, after hearing Arjun out, Arjun gives about 5 reasons why he doesn't want to fight in the first chapter. And at the beginning of the second chapter, Arjun kind of makes up his mind and says, "O Govinda, I shall not fight." And at this point, he humbly seeks counsel of Lord Krishna. So in such a mood of confusion. He's confused. He doesn't know what to do. He's not sure what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do, what is the decision that he should make. He's presented arguments, but he does not know conclusively, and therefore he surrenders to Krishna, asking him, "Okay, what should I do? I'm in this situation. I don't know what to do. Please help me." So, after uh, Arjun begs guidance and counsel from Krishna, the first thing that Krishna does is he tells him off. He disciplines him. He says, uh, he says that you are lamenting for that which is not worthy of lamenting for. Where's that verse? He says, Ashochayanan vashochastam pragyavadamscha bhasase gatasuna gatamshamscha nanushocanti pandita. Although you are speaking learned words, you're grieving for that which is not worthy of lamenting for. He's lamenting because he thinks that uh, by killing his cousins, his relatives, his teachers, that it will be a great cause of distress for him. And Krishna is telling him that it's not worthy of lamenting for. This seems kind of counterintuitive, like if my relatives die, uh, surely that's a great cause of sorrow. Uh, Naturally, we see so many people, especially during the past couple of years, have passed away, and it causes great grief to the relatives. And this is natural. But here Krishna is saying that you are mourning for that, for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. And here, in this present verse, Krishna is uh, explaining why it is not worthy of lamenting for. Because he describes the living entity's true identity. He describes that the body and the living entity are different. The living entity resides in the body but is not the body. So here is described that the material body is sure to come to an end, and therefore if the body ends now or the body ends later, at one point or another it will perish, it will go. And therefore, by not fighting, Arjuna would just be avoiding or delaying the inevitable. Inevitably, no one lives forever. At one point or another, uh, the body will perish and will no longer function. And so, the body may perish, the body is destructible, the body is temporary, but the owner of the body is not so. In a previous verse, and even in this verse, it says sharirina. Sharirina means the possessor of the sharir, or the body, the possessor of the body. And the possessor of the body is indestructible. Anashina, indestructible, immeasurable, and nitya. Nitya means eternal. And so, whether or not Arjun kills his relatives or not, uh, whether they die now or later, at one point or another, uh, they will continue, because only their material body will be destroyed. Their identity or their living entity itself will not be destroyed. They will just move on to another body. And therefore, the person still exists. After death, it doesn't mean that one's identity, they cease to exist. They still exist. This is what Krishna is describing. And if they still exist, there is no cause of lamentation. It's like when the example is given in the Bhagavad Gita, Vachamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani granati naropanani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani jnani samyati navani dehi. Just as a person quits or gives up old garments, old clothing, and puts on new garments, in the same way a living entity gives up old uh, unusable bodies and takes on new bodies. Like every day we change clothing, and so at the end of the day, when we discard old or torn clothing or uh, unclean clothing, we don't lament, because we know that uh, our identity is not with the body, not with the clothing. In the same way, our identity is not with the body; it is with the spirit soul. And this spirit soul, in this verse, three features are described. One is that is indestructible, another is that it's immeasurable, and the third quality that is described is that it's eternal. Indestructible means that it cannot be destroyed by any weapon, it cannot be burned by fire, it cannot be cut by a sword, uh, it, it cannot be moistened by water, withered by the wind. And in any situation you put the spirit soul is never to be destroyed. Even up to the point of liberation, after liberation, the spirit soul always remains individual, and so the spirit soul is never destroyed or merged. Uh, it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita 2:12. Natva evaham jatanasam natane me janadipa nachaiva na bhavishyama sarve vayam ataparam. Never was there a time when I didn't exist, nor you didn't exist, nor all these kings. Krishna is saying this to Arjun, that I existed in the past and I will continue to exist in the past. You existed in the past and you shall continue to exist in the past, in the future, sorry. And same with all these kings. They existed in the past, they're existing now, and they will continue to exist. And therefore, there's no lamentation for the body which is just temporary. And so, in that way, the spirit soul is indestructible. The second quality mentioned here is that the spirit soul is immeasurable. Although it's described that the dimensions of the spirit soul is, if you take a tip of a hair and you divide it into 100 pieces, then you take one of those pieces and you divide it into further 100 pieces, then that is described as the dimensions of the spirit soul. Now, what it means by immeasurable, if we logically think about it, how can we measure a tip of a hair? Even if you take the most finest capillaries, is that what they're called? The measuring instrument. Even if you take the most finest of measuring instruments, it's difficult to measure the tip of the hair. How much is a tip? Is it 1 millimeter? Is it half a millimeter? Is it a quarter of a millimeter? What is a tip? Is it the bunch of atoms at the end of the hair? So in that way, the spirit soul is immeasurable. Prabhupada says here in the purport, as mentioned in the previous verse, it is so small that no one can have any idea how to measure its dimensions. Yeah. The next quality of the living entity that is described here is that the living entity is eternal. Yet its existence continues. Sometimes Prabhupada gives the example that when someone is on their deathbed and the person dies, the relative says, "Oh, my relative is gone." But where have they gone? They're lying there on the deathbed. Everything you saw when they were alive is the same thing you're seeing when they're dead. So what is that which is gone? So that is described as spirit soul. So the body is temporary, but the spirit soul is eternal, and it is the spirit soul which gives life to the body. And in this way, the material body is sure to come to an end. On this basis, Krishna is encouraging Arjun to fight. Now, this is relevant for all bodies and all spirit souls, that the spirit soul is eternal, the body is temporary. But this does not justify unnecessary killing. It does not justify that we should harm others. Oh yeah, let me just kill this person because they're not the body anyway. It won't do any harm. The reason why Krishna is particularly instructing Arjun to fight is because that is his particular duty according to the system of Varna and Ashram. The system of Varna and Ashram is prescribed by Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Is described Chaturvanyam Mayashishtam Gunakarma Vibhakasha, that Krishna instigated this system of Varnashram, and this Varnashram system gives a social framework for stages of life and different occupations. These occupations are to be determined by quality and work, the quality of one's character and activities that they perform. So Arjun's natural occupation was administration and warriorship, administration and fighting. Fighting on the basis of religious principles, fighting on the basis of morality. So, in this particular context, Krishna is advising Arjun to fight because he's fighting so on moral grounds. Arjun was, uh, yeah, his property was wrongly, in one sense, stolen, and stolen by his relatives, the Kurus, and the Kurus were adamant on not returning what was rightfully the Pandavas, and therefore, uh, because the Kurus did not even spare the Pandavas small villages, little bit of land in which they could, where they could perform their natural duties of ruling over citizens. Uh, because the Kurus were not uh, willing to even give such a small amount, a fight was inevitable. Because if the Pandavas did not have proper occupation, if they did not have facility to properly execute their duties, then they would be uh, in a strange position. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Shri Gaunitai ki jai. Elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes that one should perform their own prescribed duties, even if they perform it imperfectly. That is much better than performing another's duty, although doing it perfectly. And because warriorship, ruling, uh, administration, that was the prescribed duty for Arjuna according to his uh, Varna, Kshatriya. Uh, he should do such, but he needs the facilities. And therefore, uh, Krishna is advising uh, Arjuna to fight. Now, we discussed how the material body and the spirit soul is different. And knowing this, we'll now discuss the implications and consequences of such information. Uh, when we identify with the body, we think that the body is the source of our happiness. We try to derive pleasure from different instruments of the body or different senses of the body. Because naturally, the Vedanta Sutras say that all living entities want to enjoy, they have an inherent inclination to enjoy. Anandamayo Vyasad. And therefore, even though we misidentify with the body, thinking the body is ours, we still have that inclination and propensity to enjoy. And therefore, we try to enjoy through our senses. But this enjoyment is uh, faulty, is got a manufacturing defect, and therefore one should try to correct it. the defect is such that such enjoyment via the senses is temporary. Uh, it doesn't last long. Uh, for example, when we take some really nice food, it may taste good for 5-10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes if you keep it in your mouth for long, but after that, it won't last. The taste will go away, and therefore, this enjoyment of the tongue is temporary because it only lasted 30 minutes. What about after 30 minutes? Another defect of material enjoyment is that sometimes it's not as good as you think it will be. Sometimes you look at the dish and it looks really good. The aesthetics are good. They put the salad dressing on the salad with like this funky style, and you think it's gonna taste amazing. And then you take a bite and you realize that the leaf is like bitter, and then it's like you're completely disappointed. Not that it always happens as such, but the idea is that uh, enjoyment uh, of the senses is got many problems associated with it. And so, if this enjoyment of the senses is problematic, what is the solution? The solution is that we should know our identity, where we come from, and how we can really derive bliss that is uh, permanent. And that permanent bliss can be derived when we associate our activities on the basis of the spirit soul. When we perform activities in the bodily concept of life, then we experience the distresses of this material body. But when we perform activities in relation to the spirit soul, then we can derive bliss because the spirit soul is eternal, the spirit soul is indestructible. Any material bodily enjoyment is sure to come to an end because the body will come to an end. The body in itself is such a cause of suffering. There's so many diseases and difficulties that the body presents, and but the spirit soul is eternal, is indestructible, and therefore happiness on the basis of the spirit soul is blissful. It does not have a manufacturing defect. So I think we'll conclude here. If anyone has any questions, comments, corrections, anything they'd like to discuss. Yes, Chaitanya.
Theoretically, we always hear that happiness, eternal happiness, soul, souls are blissful, all these different things. But we find ourselves going back again and again, even if it's taking an extra piece of cheesecake
Yeah,
or taking another cup of sweet rice, we're still
yeah,
trying to enjoy it
yeah.
through the material senses. And even enjoying prasada,
Mm-hmm.
which is a spiritual food.
Mm-hmm.
But in one place, someone tried to say that to the extent that we're trying to enjoy it, it's not prasada. That
Yes,
really is a service.
yes.
So how do we actually realize that? Because how do we stop going for materialism and just take this in spiritual?
So the question is, how do we uh, stop kind of enjoying the matter and go for the spiritual? One thing is that they have to go hand in hand, because if we try to give up the material enjoyment without any other engagement, we'll end up frustrated, because uh, the living entity has to perform some sort of activity. Uh, we are, as human beings, social beings, and therefore uh, we must have some social engagements and some activities. So that's the first thing. And you're right, because in the purport of Nectar of Instruction, text 1, Prabhupada mentions that controlling the tongue means taking prasadam and chanting Hare Krishna. But if one is taking prasadam with the view of enjoying, then that is not controlling the tongue. So how can we control the tongue? Some thoughts that initially come to mind is that one must first try to develop a spiritual taste. One must first try to develop a higher taste, and that higher taste has to be genuine. Param drishtva nivartate. This higher taste has to be genuine, and I think if we focus on developing a higher taste, alongside and coupled with determination to avoid sense enjoyment, then gradually we can move in that direction. For example, if someone is reading Srimad Bhagavatam, right, and they have a taste for Srimad Bhagavatam, then they may consider that to get prasadam. I mean, I'm not like starving. I'm not so hungry, but to get prasadam, I have to walk all the way to the Haveli. Then I have to walk. I have to honor the prasadam, consume it. Then I have to walk all the way back, and I could have read like 10 verses by then. I want to know what happens next. Gajendra is stuck in the water. Is he gonna drown? I don't know. What's gonna happen? So, when the taste is there, naturally, we don't. We're no longer kind of inclined in that way. Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsam Sangasteshu Upjayate Sangat Sanjete Kama Kamat Krodha Upjayate. That sense enjoyment starts with contemplation. When the contemplation of enjoying the sense objects is there, then attachment comes. And from attachment, lust comes. And when this lust is not fulfilled, anger comes. So when we contemplate, then we're more inclined to enjoy that pleasure of the tongue. And we know that enjoying the pleasure of the tongue is, got a manufacturing defect. We probably want to enjoy too much, or probably for the wrong reasons. And so some thoughts that come to mind is, if one is not hungry, or if one doesn't need to take more foodstuffs, prasadam, then best not to contemplate it. Best not to contemplate it. Like I used to, at like 7:30, I used to come down and check what's for Mahaprasadam, 7:30 time. So this is contemplation, I had milk. I had milk at 6. Why are you going down at 7:30, bro? You had milk. But I'm going because I'm contemplating. So when the contemplation is there, you're more likely to indulge like that. Then also, what I find helpful is reminding oneself of the basics. Rupa Goswami says, Vacha Vegam, Manasakrodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udarapasta Vegam, this controlling of the mind, the urges of anger, urges of mind, urges of the tongue, urge to speak. These things, we kind of got the gist of it when we studied the verse, and then after a while we find ourselves indulging again, or at least myself. So I find it's nice to kind of revisit some of these critical verses, just so that we can remind ourselves that what is the importance of controlling the tongue, how to do so, reminding ourselves, because when we don't have active kind of concentration on controlling the tongue and the senses, then we can easily be led away by the senses. At the moment, we're practicing spiritual life at such a stage where we want a spiritual taste, but we have some sort of material taste. We want to materially enjoy, but we know that that's not the right thing. But we don't have enough of a spiritual taste to be able to completely give up the material enjoyment. So we're in like that midway point, you know? It's like we're at a point where we're at a yellow light and we don't know whether to like speed past or brake and stop at the light. So, but nonetheless, somehow or other, we have some spiritual taste because we are performing some spiritual activities. If we weren't performing any spiritual activities, we wouldn't be performing. Yeah, if we didn't have spiritual taste, we wouldn't be here. And in regards to controlling the tongue and spiritual taste, it's also interesting to value, okay, how much taste do I really have? So I'm reading Chaitanya Charitamrita at the moment, and there's a section where Srivas Thakur is at Srivasangam doing his kirtans, and you know they're quite fired up. Now, he is relishing the holy name. His relative dies, but he doesn't leave the kirtan because he's relishing the holy name. I mean, I think it's described. Don't quote me. His relative, I'll say for sure, but maybe his son. His son, right? Yeah. So his son dies. Now he had enough taste for his son to die, but him not leave the kirtan. Right? Now, if you take it one step lower, it may be that his relative dies. For example, you're doing japa, and you get a call like your relative died. That's one thing. Then it may be that a distant cousin died. Then it may be that, oh yes, some devotee I knew died. Then it may be that, oh, someone went to hospital. Or something maybe less extreme that uh, um, I don't know, I forgot I had service or something, or someone sent me a message. But my point in this is, at what point would we leave the kirtan? At what point would we leave the kirtan? Would we leave the kirtan when we get a message? Would we leave the kirtan when our phone rings? Would we leave the kirtan when a devotee is like, come, I got to show you something. It's really cool. Would we leave when a relative dies? Would we leave when our son dies? Srivas Thakur didn't leave when his son died because he had taste for the holy name. So he was relishing. So, yeah, I just found it interesting to see and evaluate within ourselves how much taste we really have. Another aspect that comes to mind is when we thoroughly understand the importance of something, then we pay more attention to it. Like when we emphasize the importance of chanting the holy name, then we'll chant more carefully because we understand the value and importance. And therefore, if we understand the value and importance of controlling the tongue, controlling the mind, the senses, then we'll pay more attention to it. How we develop this importance or cultivate this importance, it can be through introspection of one's experiences, it can be through Shastra, through the scriptures. The best way is if we can hear the Shastra and become completely convinced. Yeah, because if we're convinced that this will do no good, then we're less likely to do it. And how can we develop value and importance of such spiritual practices? I was hearing in one lecture that this comes from mercy. Because we hear so many times the value and importance of, for example, chanting the holy names of the Lord. But deep down, do we really value it? So such value comes from mercy. Mercy of the Lord, of the devotees. Like that. Because essentially, we can't make it on our own, so we have to pray, we have to serve. Yeah, there's this verse in Bhagavatam, Shushusha Shaddadhanasya Vasudeva Katharuchi Syan Mahad Sevaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevanat. Meaning that when one serves a great saintly elevated devotee, then comes taste in Bhagavatam. Vasudeva Katharuchi, the narrations of Vasudeva, taste in that comes from Mahad Sevaya, Syan Mahad Sevaya Vipra. So we have to. There's also that verse. I don't know it, but Canto 5, Chapter 5, Verse 2, uh, that describes serving the great souls like that. So yeah, I hope that kind of helps somewhat. Or any other questions or comments, reflections? If not, I think we'll conclude here. Thank you everyone for coming and attending. Yes. Developing the. Yeah. 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 I mean, Arjun asked the same question, right? Like, why is it that I'm inclined to perform sinful activities even though against my will? Because of lust. Because lust is there in the heart. That's the description in the Bhagavad Gita. But yeah, despite so many kind of uh, logical kind of conclusions that we have in our mind, still the senses go wild, you know? Yeah. So I guess controlling the senses is also an art, you know? Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice comment. I don't think I have any more to say. um, yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Then there's the other thing, you know, like Rupa Goswami describes real renunciation, you know, and if we're too renounced, this it may not be conducive, you know. So then also, uh, we also have to see where we're at. Um, if for example, like a completely materialist is like at like 100% sense enjoyment, and a complete spiritualist is like a 0 sense enjoyment. Of course, the 100% materialist is at a 0% spiritual level, but the spiritualist at a 0% material level is at a 100% spiritual level. So when these two are going up and down, we have to see where we're at. You know, like if we're at like 70% material enjoyment, and we try to behave at like a 20%, there may be some friction. You know, we just may not be able to do it. Like for example, we may have a thing for sweets. Now, if we try and completely avoid all sweets at all costs, like going from, for example, like one sweet a day to like completely nothing or something, then it might be too much for us, especially when we haven't yet developed such a spiritual taste. So what I was thinking in this regard is moderation and some sort of restriction, but not complete negation. You know, like for example, if one has a thing for sweets, they could have like a couple a week or something. You know, it doesn't have to be, for example, every day or something, but some sort of moderation. You know, and then one can work on reducing it. You know, like for example, if one is at like a inclination to materially enjoy 70% according to their spiritual taste, for example, and uh, if they try to work to, okay, fine, let's try to work to 68, then that may be more of a doable thing, you know. So I guess over time one can kind of work at it step by step. It's just some thoughts. I don't know. Yeah. Thank you for the discussion. It's very nice. I think due to time, we'll end here. So thank you everyone for your kind attention. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pachata Deshatyarine Jayo Jayo Gaurav Chandel Arati Kashobha Kiva Jayo Jayo Gaurav Chandel Arati Kashobha Janavi Tata Vane Jagamana Lobha Janavi Tata Vane Jagamana Lobha દાક્ષિણની તાઈ ચંદાવમે ગદાધર દક્ષિણની તાઈ ચંદા વામે ગદાધર નિકટે અદ્વૈત શ્રી વાછ છત્રધારા નિકટે અદ્વૈત શ્રી વાસ છત્રધારા બાસિયા છે ગૌરવ ચંદ્ર રતન સિંહ શાણ બાસે એ આ છે ગૌરવ ચંદ્ર રતન સિંહ શાણ આરતી કરે ના બ્રહ્મા આદિદેવ ગાણા આરતી કરે ના બ્રહ્મા આદિદેવ ગાણા નારો હરિ આદિ કરી ચમર ડોલાયા નારો હરિ આદિ કરી ચમર શંખો બાજે ઘંટા બાજે બાજે કરતાલા મધુરા મૃદંગા બાજે પરમ ચંદ્રજીની વદન ઉજ્જવલા શિવો બાહો કોટી ચંદ્ર જીણી વદન ઉજ્જવલા गल देसे वनमाला कर जलमाला गल देसे वनमाला कर जलमाला शिव सुख नारदा प्रेम गाद गाद शिव शिव ओ सुख नारदा प्रेम गाद गाद विनोद देखे गोरा संपदाया भगति विनोद देखे गोरा संपदाया की शोभा जग जन मन लोभा ए गोरा के रे आरती की शोभा जग जन मन लोभा जग जन मन लोभा Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Jayo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I see some people is still are not taking advantage of this. So please take the advantage of this, Harinam. That's the only thing will go with us when we left this body. That's the idea. We're going back home, back to Godhead. Chanting means this is our ticket, nothing else. So please follow with us and chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Everyone. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Bola Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Bola Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Radhe Radhe. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Bola Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Ragupati Raghav, Raja Ram, Patit Pavan, Sita, Bolo. Jayo Ragupati Raghava, Raja Ram, Patit Pavan, Sita Ram. Ragupati Raghava, Raja Ram, Patit Pavan, Sita Ram. Jaya Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram, bolo. Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Jayo Radhe Shyam. Bolo Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Jayo Radhe Shyam. Bolo Radhe Radhe. Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Jayo Vrindavan Dham. Jayo Ragupati Raghava, Raja Ram, Patita Pavan, Sita Ram. Bolo Radhe Radhe. Ragupati Raghava, हाथ ऊपर करके raise your hand, hands up, आप भगवान ने जिसको हाथ दिया हाथ ऊपर करो, come on. After me, okay, follow. Hare Krishna. Louder, जोर से बोलिए. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hare Ram. Ram Ram. Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivakacharya Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. नीचे बैठिए, नीचे bow down, sit down everybody. Srila Prabhupada ki. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivakacharya Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki. Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj ki. Sachidanand Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki. Ganga Mai ki. Jamna Mai ki. Tulsi Devi ki. Bhakti Devi ki. Sri Sri Radha Gokulanand ki. सीता राम लक्ष्मण हनुमान की, श्री वृंदावन धाम की, श्री अयोध्या धाम की, नवदीप मायापुर धाम की, जगन्नाथपुरी की, जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की, षट गोस्वामी प्रभु की, भक्तिवेदांत मैनोर की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की, निदाय गौर ब्रह्मंदे all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees. All glory Sri Guru and Guru Go. Om Sri Prabhupada ki jai.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladalada Daine. Hiranyakashipu Raksha. Shiratanga Nagalai. Ito Nisinga Bharato Nisinga. Yato yato yamita to nisinga. Mahir nisinga, idaye nirsinga. Arai singa madi sharanam prapadi. Kamala Vari Nagama Bhuta Singha Dalita Iranya Kashipu Danu Vringa Keshavadrita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadishari Jai Jagadishari Jai Jagadishari Hare Nakanta Singha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Anubhinga Keshavadita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadishari Jai Jagadishari Jai Jagadishari Keshavarita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadishari Jai Jagadishari Jai Jagadishari Narari Rupa Jai Jagadishari Jai Jagadishari Jaya Nishinghare Nishinghare Jaya Hare, Jaya Nrsimha Hare, Nrsimha Hare, Nrsimha Hare, Nrsimha Hare, Jaya Nrsimha, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Shri Nrsimhadev Bhagavan ki, Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Go Premanande Hare Go.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for attending tonight's Goa Artik. Now we'll have some Mahaprasad in the reception area, and the next darshan will be at 9 p.m. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.